Thomas Forrester's heart slammed against his ribs the moment he saw the announcement on the Forrester Creations intranet. Hope Logan, avant to wed Carter Walton in June. The words seemed to burn themselves into his skull, a betrayal writ in glaring headlines that chilled him to the bone and set his blood alight all at once. He'd flown home at once, abandoning appointments, excuses tumbling from his lips, consumed by a single thought. Hope was going to marry Carter. The same Carter whose awkward jokes and boyish grin had somehow insinuated himself into Hope's world. The same Carter whose very presence was a dagger twisting between Thomas's ribs. It was unforgivable. He had believed time, therapy, the passage of months, had laid to rest the wildfire in his veins for Hope Logan. He had thought the horrors of his own psyche, the nightmarish sessions in which he poured his heart into talking to a doll that looked like Hope. The hollow plastic eyes, the fevered promises he made to her, the twisted lullabies he whispered in the dead of night, were the lowest point of his obsession. He had convinced himself he'd emerged from that darkness a changed man, capable of loving without destroying. But this engagement proved otherwise. He arrived in Los Angeles with only the essentials, a garment bag slung over his shoulder, a notebook stained with frantic scribbles, and a USB drive concealed in his pocket. He cut through the city like a revenant, mind looping through every interaction he had observed between Hope and Carter, Hope's dazzled laugh, Carter's protective arm around her waist, the way he'd lingered at Hope's side during last month's Avant launch party, whispering in her ear. Every moment he'd missed, every smile Carter had won from Hope, stung like acid. Thomas moved through the halls of Forrester Creations under the guise of attending a design briefing, but his real purpose was far more sinister, to force Hope to confront the double betrayal that he would lay bare, shattering her illusions about Carter and exposing the rot beneath her family's veneer of perfection. Thomas recalled how Carter had charmingly promised to help Hope transition from model to designer, insinuating himself into the Logan Avant camp as her personal manager, her confidant, her champion. But Thomas had discovered Carter's secret, emails in which Carter plotted to undercut Forrester's newest collection, colluding with a rival firm to leak sketches, planting rumors that Forrester was on the brink of bankruptcy, all to pressure Hope into fearing for her career and relying on him. He'd intercepted clandestine phone calls, recorded meetings where Carter arranged for Hope's designs to be rerouted through offshore production, undermining quality so that Hope would doubt her own talent and turn back to Carter for reassurance. Worst of all, he had uncovered documents suggesting that Logan Investments had quietly sponsored Carter's startup, trusting him to forge a partnership only for Carter to pocket millions in illicit markups, all while spinning the narrative that he was sacrificing everything to support Hope. Thomas clutched the USB drive now, his fingers white with resolve. Tonight, he would crash their world. He had chosen the venue carefully, the grand ballroom at the Beverly Hills Hotel, where Hope and Carter planned a rehearsal dinner before the wedding. Floral arrangements of white peonies and blush roses lined the walls, a string quartet rehearsed in the corner, and cushioned chairs were set in neat rows for family and friends. Designers mingled with socialites, flute glasses of champagne tinkled, laughter floated like music through the air. Hope wore a soft smile as she drifted among guests, her gown a cascade of silk and sequins in pale lavender, her signature color, a perfect reflection of her unbreakable optimism. Carter, resplendent in midnight blue tuxedo, guided her toward their families with a proud beam, unaware of the shadow slipping in through the back entrance. Thomas moved with ghost-like stealth, slipping behind velvet drapes that framed the ballroom's arched windows. He clicked the USB into a concealed laptop, projecting the contents onto the ballroom's giant screen moments before the toasts were to begin. The quartet fell silent as the video flickered to life. First, Carter's voice in a clandestine call, promising a voice vote leaked to Clay Madison's execs. Next, a split screen showing grainy footage of Carter handing sealed envelopes to a competitor's courier in a darkened alley. Gasps rippled through the assembled crowd as static images of bank statements exposed Carter's offshore accounts, thousands of dollars transferred from Logan Investments, laundered through shell companies, all traced back to his digital signature. Hope's smile froze mid-bite of hors d'oeuvre, her cheeks drained of color as she saw the man she loved cast as a calculating deceiver. Thomas strode into the center of the room, eyes blazing with triumph and madness intertwined. "Hope," he called, voice echoing. "You need to see the truth." He gestured to the screen, where Carter's pleading face was caught in a loop of betrayal. "You think he's your savior, but he's been playing you and your family for fools. He's been dismantling your future step by step, making you depend on him while he pockets millions you all worked for." The room erupted in chaos, shouts, sobs, phones flashing as everyone recorded the unveiling. Ridge Forrester's face, etched with outrage and disbelief, loomed as he stormed forward. Brooke Logan clasped her hands over her mouth, eyes brimming with tears. Steffi's jaw clenched, fury blazing. Even Donna Logan, matriarchal and composed, gasped as she realized the depth of the deceit. Hope stood rigid, her jaw quivering as she absorbed the torrent of revelations. "Thomas," she whispered, voice broken, "why?" She looked at Carter, whose face had gone ashen, eyes wide with panic. "Hope, I can explain," Carter stammered, lips trembling as he reached for her hand. But Hope shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "How could you?" she choked. "All this time." The words trailed to nothing as she realized the immensity of the double betrayal, from the man she loved and from the family she trusted to guide her career. The breadth of her shock was mirrored in the stunned silence that settled over the room. Thomas stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Hope could hear. "You deserve the truth. I tried to warn you, but you were blinded by love." His tone was both triumphant and tender, as though offering a gift wrapped in razor wire. "Now you see the lengths he went to, and how far he'd push you to break from your own family." Hope's tears fell unheeded as she tore her gaze from Carter's remorseful face and turned to her parents. "Mom, Dad," her voice trembled as Brooke and Ridge flanked her, arms outstretched in shock. "Is this true?" Brooke's sob was raw. "Baby, we trusted him." Ridge's hand shook as he extended it toward the screen, tracing the transactions with a quivering finger. "We were fools." Amid the gasp of heartbreak, Hope turned back to Carter, who now dropped to his knees, pressing his hands together in supplication. "Hope, I wanted to protect you. I thought I could handle the deals behind the scenes so you could focus on your designs. I never meant to hurt you." But his words fell flat, drowned by betrayal's roar. Hope stepped back, shaking her head, voice steel-hard despite her tears. "You made that choice without me. You weaponized my career, my family's legacy, for money." She lifted her chin, meeting Thomas's gaze with a haunted defiance. "Thank you for showing me. I see everything now." The crowd parted as Hope walked away from Carter, her family clustering around her in solidarity. Carter remained on his knees, isolated, his tuxedo jacket creased, his dignity in tatters. Thomas watched, chest heaving, the euphoria of victory mingled with a hollow ache. He had torn Hope's world apart, and yet as he saw her grief, he felt a sudden rush of something darker. Remorse twisted with longing. He had laid bare the truth, but had he saved her or condemned her to deeper sorrow? The ballroom, once a glittering palace of promise, now resembled a battlefield strewn with broken hearts and shattered dreams. In the aftermath, As security escorted Carter from the premises and family members comforted Hope, Thomas slipped out into the cool night air, the USB drive still clutched in his palm like a trophy too heavy to bear. He retraced his steps through the hotel gardens, moonlight washing over rose petals stained with the echoes of betrayal. His mind flitted between triumph and regret. He had forced Hope to confront a duplicitous lover and the fragility of family trust, but he had also reminded her of the darkness he himself represented. His skewed mind had once driven him to delusion, to talking to a doll as if it were hope incarnate. Tonight, that madness had served him a purpose, but history had taught him that obsession breeds its own ruin. As the first light of dawn crept over the skyline, Thomas climbed into his car, staring at his reflection in the rearview mirror, sharp cheekbones, haunted eyes, and a small, triumphant smile that didn't quite reach his gaze. He drove away from the scene of devastation, uncertain whether Hope's career would recover, whether the Logan Avant name would ever trust another lover, and whether Carter would claw his way back or vanish from their lives forever. Most of all, Thomas wondered if Hope would forgive him when the dust settled, or if she would forever see him as the architect of her heartbreak, an ironic twist, given that he had once believed he was her savior. Yet as the miles slipped beneath his tires, one truth crystallized in Thomas's mind. He could never escape the shadow of that moment, nor the price of exposing Carter's betrayal. He had wielded evidence like a blade, forcing Hope to confront a double treachery of heart and ambition, but in doing so he had also staked his claim on her fate. And in the silent reckoning of his own soul, he realized that this act of vengeance had irrevocably bound their destinies once more. Hope may never trust him again, but she would never forget the shock he delivered. For better or worse, Thomas Forrester had re-entered Hope Logan's life not as a forgotten threat, but as the man who held the most devastating secret of all, that sometimes love's darkest impulses are the only path to truth. The morning after the explosive revelation at the Beverly Hills Hotel began in a haze of whispers and broken vows. Hope Logan, Avant awoke in her childhood bedroom at the Logan estate, sunlight filtering through ivory drapes and illuminating scattered rose petals from last night's rehearsal centerpiece. The faint echo of champagne glasses clinking and Thomas's accusing words haunted her as she sat up, gaze fixed on the silk gown folded on the chair, now a symbol of betrayal rather than celebration. She ran trembling fingers over the delicate embroidery, recalling the moment Carter's smiling face on that grand ballroom screen had dissolved into panic and guilt. Every stitch in that dress felt like a memory of promises broken. She rose slowly, clutching the fabric against her chest, and crossed to the window overlooking the rose garden where she and Thomas had once shared a quiet, stolen moment. There she paused, heart pounding, before placing the gown back on the chair and retreating to the bathroom where she locked the door and stared at her reflection. Her eyes were rimmed with red, her lips trembled. She pressed her palms to the cool marble sink and whispered to her own reflection, "I will not let him define me." Meanwhile, across town at Forrester Creations, Ridge and Brooke Logan convened an emergency board meeting in the glass-walled conference room overlooking Sunset Boulevard. The Forrester executives, Donna, Eric's right-hand confidant, Steffi, now channeling her grief into steely resolve, and even Liam, whose loyalty to Hope had been tested by Thomas's prior madness, gathered around the long, polished table. Carter Walton's name had already been redacted from the wedding cake order, and Logan Investments liaison was on speakerphone dealing with legal teams. "We cannot allow the scandal to cripple Hope's burgeoning career," Ridge said, voice tight. Brooke added, "She needs a runway, not a courtroom. We'll issue a joint statement condemning Carter's deceit and affirming our support for Hope as a designer." Liam volunteered to spearhead PR outreach, promising a tasteful press release that acknowledged the betrayal without sensationalizing it. Donna suggested a surprise trunk show, showcasing Hope's latest collection under the banner Born of Resilience, to reclaim narrative control. Steffi watched them argue strategy, her heart torn. Part of her wanted vengeance on Carter, part of her sought solace in family unity. At last she spoke. Hope needs us united around her. No more intrigue, no more surprises. We rally for her, or we splinter. The room fell silent as the siblings and executives nodded in agreement. Thus began the painstaking process of forging a path forward for Hope's career while sidelining Carter's name and averting a PR catastrophe. In the meantime, Carter Walton lay sprawled on the plush velvet settee in his penthouse loft, phone clutched in one hand and a half-empty glass of scotch in the other. His world had crumbled in a single projection, from fiancé to fugitive in the blink of an eye. He replayed Thomas's video over and over, each clip a fresh wound. The offshore account transfers, the meeting with the rival firm's execs, the leak of Forrester designs. He knew he'd been cunning, but he never believed the Forrester Logan alliance would mobilize so swiftly and so ruthlessly. He drained the scotch, then tapped out a terse message to his lawyer. Meet me at my office in 1 hour. We need a strategy to salvage whatever's left. But as he waited, Carter found himself doubting every ally he had, every deal he thought solid. His mind raced through alternate scenarios. What if he'd confessed earlier? What if he'd begged Hope's forgiveness? Now it was too late. As the lawyer arrived, a stern woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, Carter realized he faced not just personal ruin, but a legal quagmire, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, potential prison time. His lawyer outlined the options: countersue Forrester Creations for defamation, seek a plea deal for reduced charges, or attempt a public apology tour, but Carter's heart sank at each. None promised salvation, only varying degrees of humiliation. He looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the glittering skyline, feeling as though he'd fallen off a cliff. Behind him lay the life he'd built with Hope. Before him, only the cold machinery of litigation and the unforgiving glare of tabloid headlines. Back at the Logan compound, Hope convened her own intimate meeting with Thomas in the sunroom where he had once revealed his darkest secrets. He entered with cautious deference, blueprint folder in hand, eyes downcast. Hope sat on the wicker settee, sunlight dancing across her hair, and motioned for him to sit. For a long moment they surveyed the tranquil koi pond beyond the window, the only witness to the turmoil of the last 24 hours. Then Hope spoke, voice steady but soft. Thomas, thank you for opening my eyes to Carter's deceit. I don't know what to feel right now. Anger, sorrow, relief. Thomas swallowed, heart pounding, and gently placed the folder on her lap. These sketches are yours, he said, indicating the fresh designs he'd completed in secret so she wouldn't have to rely on anyone else for her labels. No guests, no sponsors, no partnerships. Just you and your vision. Hope looked down at the crisp white pages, each line a testament to her talent, and allowed herself a small, bittersweet smile. I can't believe you did this for me after everything. Her voice cracked, and Thomas reached to steady her hand. Their fingers brushed, and for an instant the old forbidden spark flickered between them. Memory of a time before betrayal, before dolls and deception, when love burned pure and reckless. But Hope pulled her hand back gently, eyes firm. Thomas, I need time. Time to heal, time to build my career on my own terms. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I know I need to stand on my own 2 feet. Thomas nodded, pride and longing warring in his chest. I'll be here whenever you need me, he vowed. No more secrets, no more games. Hope met his gaze with a fragile hope of her own, hope that one day she might trust him again, hope that her shattered life could be pieced back together. As the weeks passed, Forrester Creations and Logan Investments collaborated on the Born of Resilience showcase, staging a glamorous runway event that drew the city's elite and the fashion press alike. Hope, radiant in her element, debuted a collection inspired by her ordeal. Structured bodices softened by chiffon layers and tones of pearl and rose, each silhouette echoing both armor and vulnerability. The audience erupted into applause as she took her bow, and within hours social media buzzed with praise for her talent and tenacity. Carter, barred from the venue by security, watched the live stream from his empty loft, bitterness and regret twisting in his gut. He recognized the woman on stage as the Hope he once loved, but she belonged to a new world now, one he could never inhabit. Thomas sat in the front row, camera trained on Hope's triumphant moment, tears glistening in his eyes. Ridge and Brooke stood beside him, offering quiet nods of approval and gratitude. As the final model swept down the runway, Brooke leaned toward Ridge and murmured, "She's stronger than we ever imagined." Ridge squeezed her hand, pride shining in his expression. In that moment, Hope Logan, Avant, reclaimed her destiny, rising from the ashes of betrayal to claim not only her career but her self-worth. Carter's name was a footnote, his treachery a cautionary tale, and Thomas's evidence, though born of obsession, had ultimately set her free. Yet beneath the glitter of her success lay the tender possibility of new beginnings. Both for Hope's future in fashion and for the complex bond she shared with Thomas, who had once nearly destroyed her but now stood ready to defend her dreams. In the world of the bold and the beautiful, even the darkest acts can yield the brightest triumphs, and as the city celebrated Hope's rebirth, one truth remained: nothing tests the heart like betrayal, and nothing proves its resilience like the will to rise again.